Okay, yeah,
Well, hey
I see it.
everyone, it is Ellen here, and I know many of you have sat in varieties of different interviews I've done. And I had mentioned to a lot of you that I was going to be interviewing different people that had been with me on the ayahuasca retreat. And I just want to say that that retreat was spectacular. It was absolutely amazing. I came back so changed, so healed in areas where I never thought that I would even get to. And so it is with my pleasure that I have James. James was
Hello.
with me on that wonderful retreat for a month, and we had just some really powerful encounters together, even in areas of healing, but also just your own experience. So, James, why don't you
Yeah.
just tell everybody who you are, a little bit about you, and your journey with plant medicine and what that all looked like?
Okay. Hello, everybody. So uh, let's start with the basics. I'm from England, Yorkshire, north of England. um, from a little place called Halifax, which is the original but lesser known cousin of the Canadian Halifax. Um, but um, I I first sort of was introduced to plant medicine really by myself. Um, when I was 18, I had sort of um, I had friends that had sort of experimented with mushrooms, and they told me about, oh, you can see things, and that always sort of intrigued me. That in my own mind, that when I shut my mind, it's like relatively blank on a visual level, but they were saying they can shut their eyes and things would appear. So that immediately intrigued me, and that was
Mm.
a very basic sort of attraction to begin with. But being in a position where I didn't really know how to source anything like this,
Mm.
I did a bit of reading, looked online, managed to find ingredients for ayahuasca,
Mhm.
and brewed that myself. Um, and followed as much research and procedure as I could,
Mm.
meditated and attempted to prepare myself for something that I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yes.
Um, and that, yeah, that first experience was basically like a watershed moment in my life. It was a week after I turned, no, 2 weeks after I turned 18.
Yes.
And it honestly felt like a um a complete perception shift.
Mm.
It's quite hard to describe unless you've been in plant medicines before or sort of hallucinogens. Um, but it felt like everything I perceived was just a different flavor now. I could
Mm.
um the same things I would see, I would be able to remember how they were before, but now they felt a bit different. Um, and really, what that sort of opened up for me was the biggest lesson that I took out of that was, well, if this is my mind and this is what I believed I could perceive in this sort of narrow space, and then I have just been shown things that were completely outside of that narrow band.
Mhm.
Then I'm thinking, well, what else is out there that I
Yes.
was not able to even comprehend before, even imagine? Um, and I think it really shook some bias out of my brain about what I was willing to see and accept in the world around me.
Mm.
Because I guess before that point, you see a lot of things, and whether it's just my ego or some part of me was saying, "Oh yeah, that looks good, but don't think it's real," or
Mm.
"That looks interesting, but probably not plausible." Mm, Afterwards, I was sort of looking at some of these things and thinking, Okay, yeah, I have been humbled by an experience, and who am I to say this is not possible or not feasible,
Mm.
and I should maybe look at it again, try see it from a different angle, and explore it properly before I dismiss it. And that I think is something that happened generally with a lot of different phenomenon around me at that point. Um, After that first experience, I then I tried it again a few times over the course of a few years,
Mhm.
both brewing myself, going with a shaman, and experiencing it from a more traditional setting. I explored some other plants, or well, fungi, mushrooms, and particularly the mescaline cactus, San Pedro.
Okay.
And each experience and each different plant medicine has taught me things that even after going through some ayahuasca experiences, there are still many, many things that I wouldn't have expected. Um,
Yes.
I guess each new experience was just a learning journey.
Yes. And if I know something about you, because you've shared your history when we were, at ayahuasca, you shared a lot
Mm,
about yourself. But you very much are a thinker. You think things through. You're very much, what you studied, even in university, and
mm,
the sciences and
mm,
all of that. And I've always admired that about you because though you are a deep thinker, and there's some, there's the depth there, there's also was this willingness that I could see at that moment to let go, to grow, to change, to transform. And so,
mm.
can you just share a little bit about the biases that you mentioned that you feel got shifted? What, I know it's hard to describe these type of
Yeah.
changes and things like that, but share that with the audience if you could, please.
Okay. So I, weirdly enough, from about the age of 5, so I grew up in a household that was irreligious.
Mm,
Um, and I went to a Church of England school, which every day in the morning and the afternoon we had to sing hymns. We read from the Bible, and I never understood it as a kid.
mhm,
Um, and it was very early on, about the age of 5. I remember asking my dad about why we do this in school, and he explained to me about um, religion and said there's various different religions. And I asked him what he believed in, and he didn't tell me. He said, "I want you to make your own mind up, um, and you know, have a look at this Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever. Go have a look." I came back to him and said, "I don't necessarily understand or believe any of these," and I essentially self-described myself as an atheist at that point.
mhm,
And that was a bias that I had built into myself from that point, probably with some influence from my parents. But
mhm,
um, the idea that me as a living organism was born, that my consciousness is just generated by the cells in my brain or
mm, mm,
electrical signals or whatever, and then when you die, it just stops, and that's it.
mhm,
Uh, I would say that ayahuasca, at least the first time I took it, gave me a feeling, a there was nothing concrete. It was just a sort of intuition that I I could almost touch a realm where non-alive entities were.
mhm, mhm,
Like I felt some connection to um a place that was beyond this realm, but inhabited conscious beings, but they weren't physical.
Yes.
So that immediately blew my bias. Not immediately blew it out of the water, but it got me thinking. And
Yes.
then after a few more experiences, I'd say particularly one that was extremely powerful, was about 3 months after the death of a friend, um, who was tragically taken too early. Um, and that ayahuasca experience was definitely something that um, allowed me to grieve and mourn and go through that process. But specifically, it showed me the life of a spirit after death and the process of
Oh,
death
wow.
and the release of a spirit.
Mhm.
Um, so that being able to sort of sense that spirit really that fully blew my bias out of the water regarding my sort of atheist belief, and I don't necessarily believe in a god or a specific being of organized religion, but I do believe there is uh, a plane of reality that is outside these four dimensions.
Yes, yes. It's interesting you said something about, your friend and you were able to grieve and you were able to go to a place that probably you weren't able to go with. And I have to say
Yeah.
ayahuasca opened me up to
Hmm.
a deeper understanding of death and transition,
Hmm.
what that looks like, and
Hmm.
loss versus the presence of a person there,
Yeah.
around us in this 3D world that we find ourselves in. Um, and I found that I was able to reconcile things where I had lost friends who were in, their teens, or, I'd lost friends in my 20s. I was able to reconcile things better because it was no longer this. I had a sense of hope, I guess, for me,
Yeah.
what it was, a hope that I not only am going to see them again, but a hope that they're here right
Mm.
now. And they're
That they've
present.
not just stopped, they've not just gone.
Yes, yes. And was
Mm.
that happened to you? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah, it was similar. It was a feeling that I mean, at first it was just a feeling that I could sense them despite
Mhm.
them not being alive. But
Yes.
then through further experiences, I have sensed that they can sense me, as in their place, they sense that I am here and that even they know I can sense them, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Wow. Oh, James, we could go a bazillion different directions in this one.
We could, we could.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we honestly could. So, in your journey of plant medicine, I know, a lot of people talk to me about plant medicine and they'll be like, "Oh, it's
Mm.
just taking a psychedelic trip. All you're doing is that's what you're doing." And what you're talking about is there's a depth to it. There can be an intentionality with it, and there can be
Yeah.
a real journey of healing, and there can be journeys of, like you said, perception shifts. So before
Hmm.
we look at what's happened with you regarding healing, I want to go back a little bit to just the perception shifts because
Yeah,
we so ruled by our mindsets and our belief systems. So can you shed
absolutely.
a little more light on something else that shifted with you in perception and mindset?
Hmm. Okay, so and this is an experience that I had with mescaline,
Mhm.
with particularly with Peruvian torch cactus. Um, and in this experience, I I had the most sort of absolute and clear, uh, visually directed sort of shift in my perception. Um, I was at one point during the experience, I was catapulted into outer space,
Mhm.
into the outer atmosphere, and I was able to look across the world as it spun. And it was almost like being in a real time on Google Maps,
Mm,
except that it
mm,
was it looked completely real to me. And that was incredibly impactful because I was able to see the constant movement of the clouds, of the planet, of the water. I in what something I had perceived before to be sort of theoretical in that yes, I know I'm here in this room or I'm walking down this street and I know that there's woods over there with moving trees and animals and over there is the sea, but to be able to look at it and see it all happening really showed me, I guess, the interconnectedness of everything.
mm,
And I think that is something that really I wasn't able to perceive before
mhm, mhm.
because we're very limited by our short range vision, audio perception. Um, and in theory, you know it's all going on, but
Yes,
until
yes.
you actually see it, you can't really feel the interaction like between the wind whipping the waves and the leaves, lots of things. Um, but just for 5 seconds to be able to sort of see it all there was very powerful for me to sort of understand that it's all live, it's all happening right now, and every movement is influencing something else. It's not a static world that we live in, it's constantly happening. Um, yeah, I'd say that was one of the biggest perception shifts to fully
Mm,
integrate sort of
mm.
my view of the world in a changing form.
Yes, yes. And that was what I was going to ask you was how you integrate that now, like with your life when you're out and about and at work or interacting with people or in nature. What does it look like for you now?
So for sure, um, I feel like I am I am more mindful of
Mm,
the actions that I do, even if that's a taking a step. Is it like, am I taking a step on this piece of grass? And I think, okay, yeah, I've just stood on this piece of grass, but have I, changed the leaf structure so that a ladybird doesn't land on it and then that ladybird gets eaten or something? Or I
mm.
feel like now everything I do, I can theorize that there is a sort of a butterfly effect that happens for it. And that might amount to nothing that I can perceive, or it might amount to something that I can perceive, or it might amount to something that is just going to cause a chain reaction down the line. Um, but definitely my being able to perceive interconnectedness um, makes me more aware of my actions, and it actually makes me easier. It's easier for me to be mindful of things around me.
Yes, yes. It sounds like being present. It's you're like, but it's more than that. I understand the more than that. Because we can just say we're present right here, right now.
Hmm.
But there is so much activity that is
Hmm.
happening in these other realms around us as we're sitting here. The trees are out there blowing, but they're
Hmm.
alive. There's spirits with the trees, there's spirits
Yeah.
with the plants. Those were different shifts for me that happened because it was like, oh my gosh, like it's not just a tree, the tree is talking to me.
Yeah.
The tree is
Absolutely.
actually talking to me. And I
Mm.
remember I was with this one shaman back when I was in Michigan, and she said, Ellen, go stand at a tree. And this was before I, had done ayahuasca. She was like, go stand
Mm.
at a tree and, just touch it and tell me what happens. So I was like, okay. So, I did this whole thing. I went up, I put my hand on the tree and I heard it. Like
Yeah.
it was like responding to me. It was like my hand was responding to the tree, and I felt the energetics just go right through with that tree. And it changed how I saw walking through the woods after that, because usually I would just
Mm.
push, I guess I would say, asleep to the idea of nature.
Mm.
And I was pushing my way through the branches, and I didn't think branches would break, and I just didn't care about it. But I remember that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next time I went after that experience, she said, go for a walk in the woods. So I did. So I went for this walk in the woods, and I remember my automatic reaction was to move this branch out of the way. And it literally said to me, do not move my branch. And I thought, and I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what just happened? What just happened? And then I saw where by accident I became very sensitive to, like, and I'm talking about trees, but I think there's a
Hmm.
real correlation with how we treat trees, how we treat nature, is
Yeah.
how we, see ourselves and how we, deal with each other. But I remember I saw a branch that was breaking off this tree, and I felt like the tree wanted me to help position the branch a little bit differently. So like I went up to it and I began to move it, and I was so in this tree and I were like so together, and I was moving this branch and putting it back, and it just said thank you.
Mm.
And that was it. And I was just like, okay, something's going like off here. And then when I, obviously went to ayahuasca. Now I had
Mm.
many other experiences prior to ayahuasca with that, but then ayahuasca just blew that open even more, because everything is so connected in your hearing at that point and your visual realm. And it was just, I mean, I might as well have been remember that bug that just kept going off. I
Oh,
it wasn't a
yes.
cricket, but there was that one bug, and I remember it was so loud, but it was like we were together in that moment singing that song,
Mm.
and it was so precious. It was
Mm.
so sacred. The
Yeah.
way that plant medicine weaved the understanding of nature.
Yeah. Yeah. That the connection and sort of response
Mm,
that that you can perceive from plants and animals, nature in general. Um, that is very powerful. I see how powerful that's been for you.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and for me for sure. Even even when it comes to sort of uh what I consume, like pack like if I buy an item and it has packaging on it, I'm thinking, where did this cardboard come from? What tree has this come from? What
mm,
impact has that had in someone creating demand for a piece of cardboard, which means it's economically viable to produce a monoculture of pine trees, and
mm,
the impact that has on the world?
mm,
I I really feel like that I think, and that's another thing that I feel it's made me more aware of regarding my connection to nature and how that impacts my life now. I do sometimes feel like a pain almost on behalf of nature, and that is, that's me feeling that pain, but it comes from a place where I'm thinking, you know, these things that we're doing right now are having really strong real world effects that are potentially damaging nature. Um, yeah, it's a two-way thing. It's not just joy that we get from connecting in nature. I have felt pain and almost like regret too that like I'm part of this. I'm part of this society that's contributed to that.
mhm, mhm. Yes,
Mm.
yes. And how do you when you look around and you're out and you're walking and you're seeing other people doing things and all of that, where do you land in that? What does that look like for you? Because for me, sometimes now, like there's a tree out here that got hit by lightning, and this guy was out there, and he's like, "I think I'm going to chop down this tree," and my insides. I mean, it was 2 days ago. I went outside, and I was just like, I
Yeah.
don't think it needs to be chopped down. I think it's actually okay. It's still standing. It's all fine. Well, look at it. It's going to fall. We need to get rid of this tree. And I was like,
Mm.
I don't know. And I could feel inside myself going, like,
Yeah.
don't chop down another tree. Like they have
Yeah.
feelings, they have thoughts, they have energy, they're talking. So
Yeah.
well, what does this look like when dealing with people?
Oh, oh, that's a how to not offend people in this ah I struggle with it. I really do. Um Sometimes I even feel like my responsibility to um the spirits of nature, Gaia, or I'm sure lots of people call uh various different things, but the ecosystem. Um I I feel more of a responsibility to that than I do to some people. Um, for instance, when some people are talking about uh, one example, um, doing lots and lots of long haul flights for the reason of I want to go to a bar in this country. I want to go do this there. Like, say, I want to do like 10 different flights and take and get get the experience for myself. I'm thinking, is that is that sort of dopamine and pleasure response that you're getting from that, does that outweigh the damage of how you're getting there? And that's just one example. There's all sorts of different ways that um, we can cause damage to the world around us in varying different ways. But it does upset me sometimes seeing the sort of nonchalance of the way people interact with nature and the ecosystem. And I don't blame them. This is
Mm,
um something I did struggle with for the first couple of years of sort of feeling a connection to nature. I felt almost like a blame on people that were damaging it. But then I came to the conclusion that actually these people are acting in this way because they have fully thought through the pros and cons, the cost and benefit, and the effects of what they're doing. The problem is that they have been taught different. Um, they have been taught that this is the cost and this is the benefit, when actually there are many more costs, and they just don't know about it. It's largely through ignorance.
mhm,
So like you with the tree, um, I have many times and still do feel like a almost like a defensive, angry emotion where I'm like, this is not what we should be doing, and there are other options, and actually look at the true sort of effects, the true consequences of this. But I do actually find that a lot of people are willing to listen
mm,
if they get shown and taught, explain different things rationally. Um, then they can change their actions, or at least see it from a different perspective, and maybe still do what they were going to do, but then fully realize the consequences.
mm.
Um, Yeah, I think that's actually a really big thing for me personally. Um, that my allegiance to nature sometimes outweighs my allegiance to other humans.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
It is because, it's interesting because we have, I can just hear it. I was almost like I could hear this, groan from people I know who might be watching this, because there is this idea that we're not interconnected, we're not in connection with them. Nature is below us. It's something we don't pay attention to. We walk all over its ground. This is ours. We take it. This is what we do. We take it. It's ours.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking Mother Earth is so supporting us right now. She is like dying in the midst of supporting us at the same time. And
Yeah.
and I've had to do the same thing. I've had to realize that a lot of sometimes it's just people not knowing. They literally don't know. There were things I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I was taught that nature was my servant, and that's the way
Yeah.
it was. You
Yeah.
tie the dog up, you're in charge of the dog, you're in charge of the cat, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of, I mean, my God, I mean, I was in charge of everything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. They're little spirits. Like they've got spirits, they have heart, they have things to teach us. Mother Earth has so much to teach us about interconnectedness.
Yeah.
Massive. And plant medicine just reinforced that with me. When I started to see how all the systems work together under the ground, and how a
Mhm.
tree goes down and like the roots come under the ground and try to help the tree. And I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, yes, I'm right there. I'm
Yeah.
there with you. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
It,
yes.
it's no, the interconnectedness is beautiful. With I think a lot of you're right, a lot of people and me included at various points in my life, me even now, there's loads of things that I don't know about the effect I'm having
Mhm.
on the planet and nature. Um I think a lot of it, especially in from people, obviously we are from the West,
Yes.
and I think there is a huge in our cultures. There's a huge sort of a lot of the things that we have been taught are built on a sort of very anthropocentric superiority complex.
Mm.
It's we view everything from the human perspective, the human time scale, and um, we look around and we think, we are important and intelligent because look, we've built a house, we've built a computer. That whale couldn't build a computer, therefore we must be more intelligent than the whale. But I mean, a whale also doesn't burn through all of its resources and put the
Yes.
planet in a position where it could potentially go through a mass extinction very soon.
Yes.
So if you look at it on a time scale that's outside of our lifetimes, then suddenly we don't seem so smart. Um, and yeah, I think that is actually something that in the future will shift. And I'm hoping that it will shift before we start seeing a lot of large consequences of our disrespect for our environment. Um, but yeah, I think if we can somehow shift away from anthropocentrism and this like superiority complex, then I do have some hope
Mm.
for
Yes.
not just human existence, but the relationship that we have with nature and that nature can have with itself going forward.
Yes. Yes. Let's talk a bit about shamanic culture, because it sees things very different. The indigenous cultures, the shamanic culture, they see things very, very differently.
Yeah,
So let's talk about that, because yes, we come from a Western mindset, but there might be people listening that go, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Who doesn't think like
yeah.
this? And so let's talk about that.
Okay. Um, so regarding sort of ayahuasca sort of and sort of let's say Shipibo
Yes,
indigenous culture because that's really what I have most exposure to
yes.
um and also that you have experienced.
Hmm.
Um well, I mean, yeah, they view uh nature very differently and they view um sort of the relationship between humans and nature as being I don't know. It's difficult for me to explain how they see it,
I understand.
um,
I understand.
because I don't want to misrepresent. Um, but for example, they view the forest and the plants and animals within it as having, there's almost like a solution to any issue that humans have. If they are respecting nature, then nature can help. Um, I mean, for instance, they also view individual animals and plants as having very distinct spirits, spirits which are not necessarily tied to this plane. I don't know if you, when speaking with Rono, or um, any of the people at Riosbo, and in Mishana village, they also talk about some of these like trees, some of the sacred plants,
Mhm.
as being actually entities not from this world,
Yes,
um,
yes.
essentially aliens that inhabit different plant physical forms. Um, that is just the idea that a
Mhm.
plant has a spirit, let alone a spirit from a different planet is something that is so far removed from how we perceive or the general perception in Western culture of plants, animals. Um, we view them, I think, a lot as, especially plants, as being unfeeling, unreactive, simply occupying a space on this planet and using sunlight to grow and reproduce, and that's it.
Mhm.
Not that they have any connection necessarily to each other or any consciousness. I think that is the sort of key. We strip living things of their consciousness in our culture, but
Yes.
in Shipibo indigenous culture, they not only fully recognize the consciousness of these beings, um, they pay great respect to them
Mhm.
through various traditions, but also I think through their usage of them. I think that they understand through using certain leaves and certain parts of plants that that is a symbiotic relationship and it is protection maybe for those plants by having them being used and being relied on by humans, that is a mark of respect, showing that they will protect these things and keep using them.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest thing I saw, and that fits a lot into how I see the world in terms of interactions between living things. Is that through evolution, if something is not used, it becomes obsolete and it dies.
Mm. Mm.
Um, the indigenous uh, usage and respect for these plants, I believe, is a important way for keeping them alive essentially. Not that they need human usage, but it is a relationship that is kept active and useful, and therefore that provides life.
Yes. Yes. I was when I was there, I had just a few discussions with different people, and the understanding of the healing properties that can be found in these plants. I mean,
Mm.
you're not going to the local pharmacy. I mean, the pharmacy's plants, but you're not going to
Yeah.
the local pharmacy and getting a pill and popping the pill. You're not doing something like that. Everything didn't come down to a pill. It came down to, wait a minute, I have a mixture of something here
Mm.
that is very, it was like what went into the system. And I can say with some of the stuff, some of the individual, you know, how they did some of the individual medicines that you
Yeah.
take and different things. My goodness, what I felt like physically, mentally, and emotionally when having
Mm.
that, what was that? There was that red drink in the morning we had to take.
Or
Oh God.
sang,
Oh
it
gosh,
begins with an
I
S.
forget it. You know, we're so used to like grabbing our coffee, right? You know, and
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
coffee. I'm going to say I enjoy coffee, but I'll tell you, after drinking that, after drinking those three things 3 times a day that we
Oh
had to
yeah.
do from the kitchen, I felt so cleansed. And what was coming through my body was unbelievable. And I thought to myself, my gosh, this is from the plants. This is from nature. And obviously a shaman who was extremely versed, generationally versed in how to make the mixtures and put them together and how to present them to us in a way that, I mean, what they were giving us was quality medicine. It's
Mm.
medicine.
Mm.
It's not
Yeah.
this, like yes, you have a psychedelic experience and you're having these different things happen, but it's for the purpose of medicine, of bringing up the shit that
Mm.
you know you're not willing to look at, and there it is, your face to look at it, but to move it through you to bring the healing aspects of it. It's like profound.
Yeah.
It was powerful. It was
Yeah.
powerful. And it changes the way I look at everything now, because it's like, well, I'm looking out here, I'm looking at the trees and the bushes. I wonder what properties they have,
Yeah.
you know, that can bring healing to me, can better me, can, you know, oxygenate my blood, all sorts of things. Oh my gosh. I know
Yeah.
we could look at this. So let's um look at the healing aspect of this, because this is really important to me, and I think it's really important
Yeah.
to the audience, because a lot of people think, oh, you're just going to lose your mind, you're going to go down there, you're going to, you know, come back worse. And I'm not saying that people don't have certain experiences that they have, but I think there's a lot of intentionality. It's the way you approach the plant medicine, because it is medicine. It's the respect, it's the consciousness that you come with it, that I believe enables the healing and the things that can happen in your life. So can we just talk a little bit about healing here? I
Okay.
know we're touching just the surface here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Specifically about like ayahuasca based
Yes,
healing.
yes. Let's look at ayahuasca. And you can share
So,
even your own experiences with healing. So,
okay. So I couldn't agree more about the bringing up shit in your life that you don't want to face, or that is difficult to deal with. Um, and that is, in my view, probably the most important aspect about the healing. Um, if I'm gonna just briefly go a bit science here,
mhm,
um, psychedelics in general have this relatively unique ability amongst drugs to suppress a part of the brain called the amygdala. Um, and the amygdala is a region in the brain that controls your fight or flight response, your adrenaline, your fear. Um, that region can either put your brain and your body into um, fight mode or flight mode, but also can, um, if it's calmed down, put yourself in a relaxed sort of rest and digest state. That's what they call it.
mm,
Now, when it comes to issues that people have in terms of memories, trauma, problems that are stored in people's brain and their body, but also and that is sort of the one of the main reasons that people would sort of seek ayahuasca-based healing. Um, that whenever someone um, has to sort of think about a trauma or a memory that has negative emotion attached to it, the amygdala is fired up and the brain is put into a sort of fearful shock state. The adrenaline is pumping, and that normally means that people struggle to fully look at those memories and integrate them in the brain.
Mm.
So, ayahuasca and other psychedelics are able to temporarily suppress the amygdala, and that allows for those memories to be experienced without this extremely powerful fight or flight response. So you can essentially be able to look at something that would have caused you to go into a shock state, um, and you can look at those memories without having the emotional connotation, the fear attached to it.
Mm.
Now, that does mean that those memories and those memories are more likely to come up during experience. Um, but I really think that that is where the healing comes in. Because if you are able to look at a part of your past, part of your memory that maybe it comes back to you every day in your life, maybe it is changing your behavior day in, day out, maybe it's giving you anxiety in social situations, maybe it's making you feel worthless about yourself. If you can look at that honestly from within your own psyche, not someone else telling you, you're looking at it from within your own cognition, and you can face that without having this overriding fear attached to it, then you can process it and, at least in my personal experience, um, deal with it almost in a how would I say this? In a more neutral, less emotionally biased perspective. Um, that I mean, for me, regarding mourning and grief, that was really powerful for me to be able to look at my friend who's no longer in this world and appreciate them for who they were and not just break down and have to cut off that mental process. I could go through it fully and really take my time to understand and appreciate and say my goodbye almost without being overwhelmed. And that I can from looking at evidence regarding psychedelic-based psychotherapy, it appears that benefit can transmit to all sorts of different traumas, different sorts of experiences for people. Um, I would definitely say that is the most important aspect of healing using ayahuasca and psychedelics.
So what do you say to somebody who is going into ceremony, let's say, and they're fearful, like they're really, really afraid, and the fear is going. I know for me, ceremony number one, I shit. Okay, that
Yeah.
one, oh my God, was like
Yeah.
was frightening.
Mhm.
But it was interesting. I mean, I can say that it was like the lead up to it was frightening. The drink the first time was frightening.
Mhm.
But then there was a space, there was this place, okay, but it took a bit. It took a
Yeah.
bit for me to come to a place where the fear left, and then I was more kind of like trying to get out of the situation, but I wasn't feeling the fear. Then I
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
feeling the fear, and then slowly the fear subsided, and then I went into this place of just almost, it kind of like knocked me on the floor, really. Ayahuasca kind of like pinned me down, and then I was able to kind of breathe and walk through that, and
Yeah.
my nervous system and all of that. But leading up to the situation, leading up to the scenario,
Mhm.
was quite fear driven.
Oh yeah.
And my heart rate was kind of, I remember, and I was the first one. Remember, I was the first one that went up
You
there. And
were, yeah,
I thought, why am
first in the
I? I
circle.
said to myself, I don't want to be sitting on the side of the circle, because this was the side that was always going to go first. And I didn't realize it, but
Yeah.
when I got in there, I was going to go to the opposite side. And I heard something say, no, you need to go right here. And I thought, okay, I'll go right here. And then I realized, shit, I'm the first person that has to go up every
Yeah.
time from here on out with these. But like you said, there was a moment, and I can attest, and I can totally affirm what you're saying. There's this moment of fear, this fight, flight, you're kind of like, oh God, and then it shifts.
Yeah.
There's a shifting that happens, and maybe that's at the point what you're saying, where the amygdala, they can kind of like, it calms it down, because then I was able to just go through this moment, this process of crying and whatever else I was going through at that
Mhm.
time,
Yeah.
um in a way that wasn't so overwhelming. Like, I
Yeah.
came out of it feeling like, oh, refreshed, versus like, God, I'm overwhelmed. I feel exhausted. I feel tired. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
tiredness. There was genuinely a tiredness. I mean, we were
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the
For
ceremony for
sure.
quite a while, but there was definitely a level of peace. There wasn't the overwhelm that I
Yeah.
was feeling.
So what I would say to someone feeling their fear pre first
Mm,
experience, I guess the first thing I'd say is that I feel fear before every experience, even now, but it's always before.
that's right.
I and the first time I think the fear was just unknown because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Mhm.
But then the more I've done it, I think the fear that I feel before going into an experience is actually my own ego that is scared that it is going to die. And it knows it's going to die and be rebuilt. And it's just a bit scared. It doesn't want to let go.
Mhm.
That's just the way I perceive it.
Mhm.
But as soon as I feel the sort of the the medicine working and feel it, um I think there's a point where it feels like it's in my gut if we're talking about ayahuasca, and then I feel it spreading out, and at the point that it's spread out and I feel it encompassing my whole body, that's when I lose the fear, and it just goes like.
Mhm.
And I mean, okay, for one example, during my time in Peru at Riosbo, I was literally, for one of my experience, fighting a Balrog in a underground tunnel system. Like, do you know what a Balrog is
I do. I do. I
from
remember you
Lord of the
telling this
Rings?
experience. Yes,
Yeah. Oh,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Keep
Okay,
going.
so during that, um, I'm literally, I'm like in my own head, I am fighting a demon
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
that's breathing fire and it's got horns, it's trying to kill me, and I'm in an locked in an underground bunker somewhere. There wouldn't really be many things that are scarier than that for me. But in that moment, I felt no fear. I felt I like it's like my mind knew I was like, okay, there's this thing, but what does that thing mean? Because I'm not fighting a Balrog. I was able to rationalize that the Balrog represented something,
Yes.
and how do I change this scenario, and how do I move on from it? And but all these things that are sort of logical processes that someone who isn't completely fearful would be able to go through to try and make the situation better.
Mm,
And looking back on it, I'm thinking if I had fear in that situation, I don't know what I would have done. I'd have probably tried to run away or something. But in that specific instance, I actually ended up somehow turning myself into a dragon and fighting this Balrog and I was able to turn through some sort of conscious control the the roof, the ceiling of this underground tunnel into the sky, and I just flew away, and I was a dragon. So that is obviously a very fantastical scenario under the influence of the plant medicine. But the fact that I was really immersed in something that should be very scary but didn't feel fear, I think it really taught me how much fear can hold me back and also how capable I am when I can rationalize things and not be completely scared. So I guess in summary, if I'm trying to tell someone going into their first experience and they're feeling scared, I'd say first of all, that's completely normal.
yes, yes.
I'd say second of all, I feel fear before every experience, even now. But when you are in the experience, the likelihood is that you will not feel fear.
Mhm.
And that the anxiety and the tenseness, the tension that you're feeling at this moment, if I'm talking to this person, that will likely dissipate.
Yes, yes.
I think that's what I would say to someone in that situation.
And so when we're talking about like a fantastical situation, as you're saying,
Hmm.
with that, I can just hear people saying, well, that was just some experience. What did that actually do for you? What's that do for your life? So you're just sitting
Yeah,
in there, all of a sudden you alchemize into a dragon, you fly away. Big deal. Who gives a shit? What's that going
yeah,
to do for your day-to-day life, James? What does that look
yeah.
like? So let's talk now. We're gonna
Okay,
begin wrapping this up because but we have time. I'm not pressured for time.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about integration because integration, to me, as one who's had different healing journeys and different things like this, it
Hmm.
has to make sense to me
Yeah.
in the real now, in the real world,
What do you
in this time.
bring?
Yep. So let's talk about integration.
Okay.
Like, what did that do for you? Like, here you are, you're in this experience, right? And
Yeah,
I'm understanding your metaphors, and I've got it. I'm right where you're at.
yeah.
But what does that do after the fact? Like, what did you find has happened in you?
Okay. So I'll switch to a different experience, which was also in Peru, but
Mhm.
this was when I was in Cusco, and it was with San Pedro mescaline cactus. Um, I was on a bus.
Yes.
This is during the end of the experience when I'm trying to get home. I have a friend with me who's, keeping me safe, whatever. And I thought for about 20 minutes that I might die in this bus. Not that I was certain I was going to die, but the thought came into my head, and I was essentially going through the motions of what if I am going to die in 20 minutes?
Hmm.
And that, um, that brought up loads of emotions. It brought me insane gratitude. It made me able to think about all, my family members, the friends, people that have brought me and brought me things in my life, contributed to my life, the positives and negatives, anything that I was thinking that, you know, this is something maybe I have regrets about. This is something I wish I'd done differently, or I'm really glad that this happened, or that I've changed someone's life in that way, or to be put in that sort of state where I was having this fantastical sort of hallucination that I might die very soon. Um, Weirdly enough, I'm not actually feeling that much fear, but sort of rationalizing it brought me afterwards, coming out of that, some immense gratitude and really appreciation for the things that I've had in my life so far and what's brought me to where I am. And that translated to me connecting and contacting some of those people I've thought about, um, just thanking them and appreciating them, but also then finding a renewed vigor for interacting with them, trying to plan to do new things together, thinking if that's what's happened before, we can do more things in the future. We can make things even better. Um, it really sort of that particular experience really cemented um, my sort of appreciation for things that I'd had, and then made me think about how can I move on and not only bring more positive things into my life, but what if I can affect other people like how I feel like I've been affected. Um, so that was one way in which I was able to integrate that experience. If we are um, if we are talking specifically about, let's say, like this Balrog experience, I realized that after coming out of that, that I could take something that appeared to be incredibly scary, and using the power of my mind, I was able to essentially think my way out of it, think my way out of a problem. And that in itself, I think gave me more of a sense of sort of personal power,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
empowered me to be uh, confident about facing situations that might seem daunting.
Yes, yes. Would you say that it grounded you, made you more grounded in the way that you approach life? Has your experiences with ayahuasca allowed you to be grounded? And I don't mean grounded like grounded stagnant. I mean grounded though. Do you feel quite centered with yourself, quite embodied with yourself since utilizing ayahuasca?
Yes, I definitely do. Particularly with regard to my interconnectedness with nature. Um, like being able to, so I do a lot of climbing outside,
Okay.
um, and through like after using ayahuasca, whenever I touch the rocks and hold onto the rocks that I'm climbing, and I guess this is about as literal sense of grounding as you can get. I'm literally
Yes.
grounding myself on the rock, but uh, I feel like I am like when I'm out there in nature, it's like I am slower and more considerate with my thoughts when I am in that space where when I am um when I'm climbing and I'm holding on, I'm actually I feel like I'm physically feeling the
Mm,
earth,
mm,
um, and also feeling like I am part of it. So not feeling disconnected from it.
mm,
In
yes.
that sense, I feel very grounded, which I'm definitely more aware of after ayahuasca. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So James, I have one more
Mm.
question.
Go
Because I
for it.
feel like I could go a bazillion times and I'll probably interview you at another time. But
Cool.
well, actually, I have two questions. If people are looking to experience ayahuasca, and they want to do this, and they want to kind of do it in a retreat center and a retreat
Yeah.
setting, but they don't actually know where to start, where to look, like what do we do? Because when you go online and you see ayahuasca, it's like it comes up with these bazillion opportunities, for you to choose from. Do you have
Yeah.
any recommendations with what you think that people should be looking for? What are some things they should look for so that it's reputable? Because you can get a lot of
Mm.
unreputable places. And I'm thankful for the Ayahuasca Foundation that I went to, and I researched that
Yeah.
for a while before I made a decision.
Yeah. Okay. So completely honestly, I I am not completely sure about how I could advise someone
Okay.
about that.
Mhm.
Um, I came across the Ayahuasca Foundation and the Riosbo Center through my work with On Air Science.
Mhm.
Um, and I was invited there. So I didn't have to choose and pick between a lot of places. Now, when I was in Iquitos, and as I'm sure you'll have seen as well, there are many people offering
Oh my
like
gosh.
every kind of retreat, like get on a boat with me,
Oh yes.
$50, $100,
I
go
remember.
go for this, right?
Yep.
Um, I would probably advise someone to not just take an offer off the street.
Yep.
Um, I would probably advise to, like you have done, do extensive research before.
Yep.
And I guess when you're doing research, you need to have a few things that you're looking out for.
Mhm.
Um, I would probably advise, at least for a first timer, to try stick to an ayahuasca retreat or experience that is more exclusively ayahuasca rather than
Mhm.
mixing other plant medicines at the same time. Just because, if you're getting into ayahuasca itself is incredibly powerful and incredibly intense on its own. And to keep it as simple as possible regarding what plants you're actually putting into you, I think that would be a key takeaway for a first timer for sure.
Mhm.
Um, it's quite hard to advise because you're right, there are a lot of things out there.
For me,
And
it really
if
came down to the shaman. There was a
right,
lot for me regarding um lineage. I wanted somebody that was the real deal,
yeah,
somebody who was tested and tried and proven as the real
yeah,
deal. And for
yeah,
me,
yeah,
that's important because I was just like, okay, I'm going down here, and I don't want somebody who like just read a book and said, okay, hi, I'm a self-made shaman here. We're gonna do it. I thought,
yeah, yeah,
and it's everywhere there. I mean, you can see it. People, I'm a shaman. I'm thinking, you could just feel it in your gut, like, no, you're not. I don't know what you are, but that is not it. So for me, it was about the reputation of the
okay,
shaman, the respecting of the lineage. Also, too, in some ways, now these are just personal preference for me, but just how long has it been around?
yeah,
What is the history of this retreat center? Is it, a starter stopper thing? I know some of them catered to a lot of celebrities. I really didn't want
yeah,
that. So I was kind of like, no, I don't want to go where like the celebrities go. Not because I thought that the people or the shamans there were not legit. I just kind of wanted something away from that type of vibe. I wanted
yeah,
like
yeah,
real, here we are, we're in the jungle thing. Like
yeah, yeah.
I wanted
More
that.
authentic.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I think you're probably pretty bang on with that. I think yeah, the shaman maestro plays a huge role, obviously, in the experience, not just through their brewing and administration of said medicine, but also through their guidance during the actual experience. And we've not even mentioned about Icaros,
Yes.
and how the sort of the traditional songs and the singing that goes on for literally 3 hours,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
how much that in influences the experience. So yeah, absolutely. But then it's also hard to say you're looking on a web page to think, well, this person is claiming to be a legitimate maestro. It's like
Yes.
how do you know that? It's not like there's a TripAdvisor
No, no, there's
review board, where people can give their reviews.
no,
Um,
James, there isn't.
yeah, but that should be a thing. The real TripAdvisor.com.
Yes.
Um, but,
I love you.
sorry.
Love you. I just,
Uh, I think yeah, shaman. Um, the mixtures themselves that they're using, um, keeping it like ayahuasca, not necessarily loads of other things at the same time. Um, Maybe the location, like I
mm,
mean, like obviously with it being something that is from the jungle, um, being in the jungle will have a huge influence
ooh,
itself.
did it ever.
Um, Being that close to it all.
Wow.
Um, but I can say from my experience going from a traditionally Shipibo trained shaman in the UK that it was incredibly powerful and the Icaros and the sound was there. Um, so probably what you've said about the shaman and the maestro being one of the most important aspects, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it for me anyway, it was so I could trust it. I could trust it because of the reputation that Rono comes with. I mean,
Yeah.
he's incredible man, incredible. I mean, just singing those songs for like hours on end was just like wow. And just the knowledge and the base and the respect that he has for the medicine and how he views things, how he sees things is just yeah, it's
Yeah.
unreal. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to wrap this up here, James, but I know you work with a charity, and eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you guys, more than one of you on here, and we'll get the
Yeah.
um your charity on. But I wanted to say thank you for just coming on here and being vulnerable and sharing from your heart. I know this is a new thing for you, but
Yeah.
you did really well. You really, really did. And I will never forget the healing that, we went through there and all of
It's
that.
powerful.
It changed my life, that experience, changed my life. So before we go, tell people a little bit about your charity, where they can find you, and yes, we'll take it from there.
So the charity that I work for is Anaya Science. It's 9 years old now. Um, Set up by uh, Simon Ruffle, Nige Nextband, Waifun Sang, and we work on. So there's been a few papers published. Um, in I think one was in Nature, about looking at how ayahuasca in a traditional setting, um, how that affects people, particularly focusing on trauma and various mental health conditions. Um, we collect data out in Peru in traditional setting of ayahuasca usage, and the aim really is to explore what benefits can be brought from ayahuasca, and the treatment that seems to bring a lot of people with trauma a lot of relief. Um, it's uh, we're UK based, but we take all our data from traditional settings in Peru at the moment. Um, Hopefully in the future, we can do some work in the UK, but that's a very legislative issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, James. Thank you just
Thank
for
you.
your time, your humility, your gentle spirit, just sharing your journey with us. I have great respect for you. I have great respect for what you have gleaned from plant medicine, but for how you're wanting to continue the raising of the consciousness of the planet, how you're wanting to continue to invite. It's like you've laid before us an invitation to a table of healing, a table of change, a table of shifting realities and mindsets. You've laid a table before us, and I just, oh, I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, James,
So,
thank you so much.
Ellen, I really want to sincerely thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's been really nice to talk to you, and I hope the audience, appreciates what we've had to share. Um, I think there's some really important things that we spoke about. So, thank you very much for this.
All right. And I will see you on the other side because I'll be back in the UK in March and I'm going to come up to
Woo!
here. Can't
Yeah,
wait. Okay.
Yorkshire.
Yes, I
Right.
know. All right. Thank you so much,
Okay.
James.
Lots of love. See you.
You too.